I've said before, and I will say it again, Charlie Kirk was never somebody that I supported. I always said I respected his grift because he was as good at it as anybody I've ever seen. But it came with a price. Now, ultimately, it came with the price of his life. But he decided that he was willing to risk assassination to no longer be party and an accomplice to Israel's genocide. Now, for those of you who know that I have been paying close attention to this issue and whether or not Erika Kirk had something to do with her own husband's demise, I don't know for sure. Do I think that she is connected to a much bigger web regarding the state of Israel and what Turning Point USA ultimately was in reality? Yes, I do. And the only person who seems to be fighting on the front lines to make sure that this case doesn't die is Candace Owens.
Mommy Sleuth, who was locked into this investigation, discovered something that me and my team had missed. I consider her, obviously, and all of you to be my decentralized intelligence agents. Anyway, she sent me a rather urgent email, and I'm obviously protecting her identity for reasons that are clear. But I want you to know that this discovery is due entirely to her. She is the person that, in this regard, went max for Charlie when I missed something. Her email stated, in effect, that I was only partially right about the plane tracking Charlie, that she had done an additional 15 hours of research and was able to discern that the person the planes were actually tracking for years was Erika.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar with what this is all about, and this is very important, and I discovered this on the day of the assassination, there was a plane that took off, I believe, from a private airport in Ogden. And no one could trace where that plane had come from, how long it was there, how it was able to get out of there. And on top of everything else, this plane left that airport when all of the state of Utah, or at least in the general vicinity of Salt Lake City, was on lockdown. No planes were allowed to take off. And yet somehow this plane did. So how does Erika Kirk factor into this? Apparently, it's pretty deep.
Not Charlie, but Erika was the one being tracked by these planes. And indeed, it turns out that she was correct. She discovered that between 2022 and September of 2025, both of those aircrafts, SU-BTT, the yellow plane, and SU-BND, the blue plane, showed 68 overlaps with Erika's documented locations, okay? 68 overlaps. I have since been able to add now 73 times that this overlapped, okay? And 29 of those instances also happened to include Charlie. Charlie was also present. And that's what I was stumbling upon when I was looking into this. I was like, why is this plane where Charlie is? The flights were majority clustered within 5 states: Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Delaware, and Utah. And it's a pattern that she believes is statistically not random. I am telling you this information has been completely verified. I am showing you this on a spreadsheet now. These are all the instances in which this plane, 68 instances that this plane crossed with Erika. And I'm also going to say this includes overseas as well, okay? So my instant question becomes, why didn't Turning Point acknowledge that this plane was familiar to them? When I was taking all of these figurative online bullets, someone could have easily said something, right? That's kind of a repeat thing in this investigation. Josh Hammer lies, I get attacked, Turning Point just stays silent. They know he's lying, but they allow the lie to flow. Alex Clark lies, I get attacked, I'm telling the truth. Turning Point knows it, but they kind of allow this like Catholic thing, lie to flow. And the influencers are allowed to lie. Nobody at Turning Point ever just steps to clarify that I'm onto something or I'm telling the truth about something. And when it comes to these Egyptian flights, the math on this is indisputable. there is less than a 0.000000001% probability, okay, under random distribution models that these Egyptian planes coincidentally landed around Erika at these times.
So what does that mean? As I said, do I think that Erika had something to do with Charlie's demise on Israel's behalf? I don't know. But as I've pointed out from the very beginning, there is something very suspicious about her actions. They do not add up. They don't make any sense. And her interview with Jesse Waters could not have gone worse for her credibility. And so Candace is on the case, if you will. And we're going to get into the fact that she has credible evidence that in conjunction with Israel, that France is seeking her assassination. As I said, the reason I believe so much of this is all coming together the way that it is because there are too many people waking up to the reality of what the Zio state really is, how it is an extension of us in the worst way. And it is creating a narrative that they can't shut down. They're trying. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they get another one, that they get Candace, for example. Israel will not hesitate to completely destroy themselves before they come to the realization that their state is a failed experiment and that it's going to fall. No matter what plans Jared Kushner has for the Riviera and Donald's real estate empire. No, this is reality. And it gets even more interesting.
Like I said, this plane was not just with her in America. It was also tracking her overseas as well. I flagged this because I was alarmed because I thought it was tracking Charlie. And I am telling you that this plane, in addition to Charlie, and primarily actually was tracking Erika. Now, let's get to the day of the assassination. On the day of Charlie's assassination, we know the yellow plane took off in the morning, but the blue plane did not take off in the morning. The blue plane, SUBND, did, however, power on. And I want to be very clear as to what I mean when I say that this plane was on. I am saying that it was transponding, okay? It's transponding at the FBO at Duncan Aviation, a private terminal. So at the very least, they powered up the electronics. At most, they fully powered it on and the engine was running. What we know for certain is that it did not move from the FBO. Did not move. It was just on and transponding. And I want you to recognize, I'm going to make it clear for you what are the times that they were transponding. It's 2 times, and I'm going to tell you those times, but first I'm going to have Mark pull this up and he can tell us what it is that we're looking at here and how we were able to find this information about the jet that was just sitting at the FBO.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on this information that I found, and I had to figure out how to use this website because my mother didn't take enough Tylenol when she was pregnant with me, so I can't get too detailed on it. But essentially, all the flight radar websites only show when the plane is actually in the air. But if the plane is on the ground and transmitting, that data from the ADSB transponder still goes out. So this website, ADSB Exchange, takes that raw data. And so I was able to find it on September 10th. If you look on the very left of the frame, it shows September 10th. And it looks like there's just one data point. But what I did is I zoomed in, and the plane's actually not moving. It's just GPS is a little bit inaccurate when you're this close, but you're able to see all these different times here. And that is the UTC time zone, also known as Zulu time. So subtract 7 hours from that to get Utah time. And so I tracked all of these down, and I was able to find that the plane was transponding from 9:05 a.m. until 10:34 a.m. Then it was off. And then at 12:40 p.m., it came back on and turned off again at 1:29 p.m.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that so that everybody understands. We were able to discern from this data as follows. On September 10th, on the day of Charlie's assassination, this plane first transponded from 9:05 a.m. plus 36 seconds until it was turned off at 10:34 a.m. and 5 seconds. Then the plane turned back on, the transponder was turned back on just 17 minutes after Charlie was shot at 12:40 p.m. and 53 seconds, and it stayed on until 1:29 p.m. and 40 seconds. So what was the blue plane doing sitting on the tarmac?
The most logical explanation is that that plane was there to pick up the assassins. And that's it. I mean, do I have proof that that's what actually happened? No. But you know what? There is a hell of a lot of circumstantial evidence that says otherwise. And whoever it was, and it's not the Egyptians, understand how clandestine operations work, ladies and gentlemen. But in reality, something happened that day that was pre-planned. Where did it start? The most logical explanation is that meeting in the Hamptons was a warning. Get your mind right, or you're going to be eliminated. Now, did they use those exact words with Charlie? I don't know. But Charlie, as Candace has shown in some of their final correspondence, suggested that he could be a dead man. And I wonder if he shared that with anybody else. So, who knows? But what Candace is showing, beyond any doubt, is that whatever narrative the FBI or any three-letter agency wants you to believe actually happened on September 10th at Utah Valley State University, only a fool would believe any of it. This is much closer to the truth than anything else.
We can only imagine what it was doing, okay? We can run a couple of options here. It's possible that they were just running a maintenance check. Duncan Aviation does offer maintenance repairs. It's therefore possible that it just chose to run some maintenance checks at an unfortunate time, okay? Another possibility is that a military jet, particularly one from a foreign country, would likely be equipped with encrypted satellite-based communications capabilities. If you wanted to make an untraceable phone call, as an example, that would be a good place to do so because only the NSA would be able to intercept that call. And it's pretty obvious that the deep state doesn't seem particularly interested in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that'd be a safe place to communicate on that plane. Like I said, these are our options. What we can do now, however, is we can add this to our list of verifiable Turning Point USA lies because I'm going to count this as a lie by severe omission. By keeping your mouth shut and allowing Candace to take all the figurative bullets as she points out the oddity of a plane that you guys recognized, okay? My point is that these planes were known to Turning Point USA, and we all deserve to know why they were on the ground on that day, what they were doing on the ground on that day, and also why Turning Point chose to stay mum when every influencer under the sun and every publication attacked me for even mentioning the planes, making it seem like I was dumb, I was stupid. Turning Point USA is able to provide answers to these questions. There is more that I know, by the way, but I want to challenge them to respond to this first. Were these Egyptian military planes familiar to Charlie Kirk? It is a simple yes or no question. And answer it carefully, please, Andrew.
And of course, she's talking about Andrew Colvett, who I have always maintained is the most suspicious person of them all involved in this entire racket. Probably had the most to gain, as Jen and I have discussed. And it's obvious now that it would make sense why somebody is suggesting assassination for Candace. You never see Candace in public anymore. She's probably in some compound of some kind. I mean, she does make a lot of money, so she does have the ability to protect herself. But I don't know, maybe it'll just be like a Hillary Clinton type situation where they'll just say, oh, can't we just drone bomb this person? Remember when Hillary said that about Julian Assange? I do.
Andrew Colvett, spokesperson for Turning Point USA, because there was something very specific, Andrew, that you told me that happened when you arrived into Provo on the tarmac that day, and it is now playing over and over and over again in my mind, and it isn't adding up.
I mean, guys, I'm just trying to get right on the image, if I can find it. I mean, that guy just looks guilty of something. I know you're not supposed to. I mean, he just really looks like a very evil guy. Am I wrong? I don't think so. There's something very sinister about Mr. Colvett. Period. That's one thing Candace is spot on about for sure.
You were in the hospital, that you were told that there was a credible threat against me and Tucker Carlson. Specifically, you told me that me and Tucker Carlson were on a list, and that you were just telling me as a friend that me and Tucker should lay low. And after you told me that, I ended our phone call and I immediately called Tucker Carlson. And I said, hey, terrified, like obviously crying all day, and telling him that he and I have to lay low because there's a credible threat. And it is now really living inside me that you did not tell me who that threat was from. I assumed the feds told you, but I asked you the question, why wouldn't the feds call me directly if there was a threat against my life? No such call has come in. How is that possible? How could someone have told you that there was a credible threat and that me and Tucker Carlson should lay low, and yet me and Tucker have since not been notified by any federal agency about those credible threats?
Because Andrew Colvett is in on whatever this is. Allegedly. Lord knows if our channel got big enough and Turning Point USA heard my statement, they would probably threaten me too. Allegedly. But I'm confident in my allegation that Andrew Colvett is a sinister individual among many, but one in particular who held a substantial level of power. And for those who don't know, the Turning Point USA annual conference is taking place in the Phoenix, Arizona area in a couple of weeks. And it really is a who's who of conservative ink that's showing up at this event to speak. I'll tell you who's not going to be there. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes. They will not be there. But a hell of a lot of grifters will, like Benny Johnson and Jack Posobiec, among others. I contemplate whether I should have the guile to actually get a press pass and fly out there for the event. Thinking about it. I know you guys would probably say, maybe, maybe not sure. Thinking about it, but I don't know. There's something really, really wrong here with what's going on. Officer Tatum actually will be there, Miss Huey. He is on the list. Megyn Kelly, a lot of them, yes. Officer Tatum, that's good. All right, we'll finish this out. We'll finish out the segment. Got one more to do.
Who do those threats come from? Because I got to tell you, there are a lot of people making videos about me and Tucker Carlson, and none of them are Egyptians, okay? In fact, it's the Israelis. It is Israel that seems deeply upset with me and Tucker Carlson. They are not letting it go. They are making threats on every stage, okay? People that are tied to Israel are making threats against me and Tucker Carlson, demanding that we be canceled. So who specifically told you in the hospital room that there was a credible threat against my life? I'm going to need that information, okay? I want to know that now because the stakes seem pretty high. And I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I would say that if there is credible threats against Candace's life, that she would definitely want to know for sure. And yes, to the chat, Tucker Carlson has been invited as the keynote speaker for the Turning Point USA conference. That doesn't mean that he's not ultimately going to get removed, because Tucker is not playing, and neither is Candace. We have one more short clip to show you regarding this story.
Erika Kirk assumed the role of CEO of Turning Point USA on September 18th, 2025, 8 days after Charlie Kirk was murdered. She has been the CEO for almost 2 months. She needs to answer these questions. If someone has lied on the 990 form, people go to jail for that. I want some explanation of why Turning Point USA sent $8.6 million to their shell company and then did not file financial statements. And Erika, I don't know who does the accounting at Turning Point, but if they have not been telling you about any of this, you need to fire your accountants immediately.
I think all valid points. And again, just to modify, it is possible that when they used that outside auditor, that they showed them all of the documentation and then they gave them a clean bill of health. And then for whatever reason, Turning Point decided not to file. It's possible. Okay. Like I said, probably a low probability, but it is plausible that they did that. But it is just a fact that they missed the filing extension deadline. So what's going on here? Where did the 8.5 million go? And what's also compelling about this video, which we didn't show, is that he clarifies that Turning Point USA actually decreased their staff, the 501c3 arm, 33% by 33%. So there was a 33% staff reduction, and yet the cost of salaries somehow went up. And to him, that looks suspicious. And I agree, that looks suspicious, right? And this, of course, is the kind of pressure that needs to be put on them. Yes, I said it was a very bad idea right off the bat for Erika, who's grieving her husband, to then instantly become a chairman and the CEO, because these are valid questions now that people are asking. And a chairman and a CEO is going to have to respond to those questions. You have to answer these questions when people are asking about money, especially given the fact that so many people, I mean, they cleared over $70 million.
$70 million cleared, not brought in, cleared $70 million. That's incredible. That's one hell of a grift. I say that the money's on the right, not on the left. But this is a completely different operation. This is an operation funded by the billionaire Zionist class. And when Charlie decided that he was taking Turning Point USA in a different direction, they said, no, you're not. And now, with the people that are taking the reins, including his widow, it's back to business as usual, with a nice increase in the salary, mind you. So yes, everyone should be very suspicious and continue to ask questions, because it is obvious to anyone with an objective eye that there is more than what meets the eye regarding what happened to Charlie Kirk. And I have no doubt that it is a sinister move that had to be made for, again, it's all about money and power. Everything, whether it is Israel or our system in general, it's all about money and power. That is what it has always been. And so long as it exists in its current form, that's what it will continue to be. And Candace, to her credit, I don't know what got over her. Probably a legitimate death threat was what changed everything for her. Probably the same for Tucker. Who knows with Fuentes? We'll see. But as I said, credit where it's due. We'll finish it up.
In the first couple of weeks after Charlie was assassinated. Okay, that's a lot of well-meaning people that are giving money to this organization who are now learning how this organization functions by routing the bulk of their money, or to a lot of their money rather, not the bulk of it, into their endowment fund, right? That is not okay. We deserve answers to the questions that we are asking, and we're going to keep asking them.